Welcome to So Fresh,
So Prince. Yes, we are both here today.
Happy to be here. My name is Andrew Apple. With me, as always, is Lorenzo Gordon.
Hello, everybody. Hello, how you doing?
I shouldn't say as always, because the day may come where one of us has to host the show without the other.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's what the internet is for, and Google Plus and all the other stuff. You know, I think maybe one day we could do it bi-coastal.
That's true. You know, just set up a Google Hangout.
Yeah.
Maybe do it on air.
Yeah.
Actually
maybe even international, so one of us can have a reason to be in Paris.
There's never a bad reason to be in Paris, but, you know, then we'll get Will himself to come in so he can sit at his webcam and just watch it and be on the podcast.
Or we could just do it from his house. We're just throwing that out there. Just
Will, if you're listening, you know, just invite us over. We're good to go whenever you want us.
We're mobile. We can be if you need it, but we're sidetracking, you know. But just throwing that out there.
And we will bring pizza and beer.
Okay, I think he can live with that.
All right, sounds like a plan. As soon as that can happen, we're gonna make that happen. We are on episode 2
yes.
today. Lorenzo, why don't you recap the episode for us?
Well, pretty much the episode is, I would say it's about Will solidifying the fact that he is here to stay, you know, and I enjoy the fact how they open it up, because they open it up with Jeffrey offering Uncle Phil an aspirin, and they didn't solidify why he offered him an aspirin right off the bat, but he said it was because they were doing some construction at the office, and really, we go on from there to meet the family in what we would call the living room, where I say they stay there for the first few seasons.
Actually, that living room only stays in for one season.
You're right. It does stay there for the first season, and only the first season. But we meet the whole family there, and Ashley's going over her schedule, and Will gets the new responsibility of taking Ashley to violin practice. And not only Ashley, but everybody else, pretty much everybody in the class, and I'd say everybody in the area. He even leaves somebody behind. You should watch that. It's a funny part. But as Will kind of sits through this Stravinsky of an event, I would say, he starts to realize, you know, that Ashley doesn't want to play the violin. And so he takes her on an adventure to a part of town that she might have never been before, and trades her violin, or pawns her violin, you know, it's up for interpretation, for a drum set. Now, we find this out when Uncle Phil comes home, and he's not too happy about it, because no parent is happy that they have a new drummer in the house. So, we go on from there. And this is where it gets great, because now we find out that Madame Chachka, or I like to call her Madame Chachki just because it sounds cooler to me, don't know why, gets replaced with a guy named Jazz. And, you know, if anybody knows DJ Jazzy Jeff, you know Jazz. So we get introduced to him, and we find out that he can actually drum, and Will can dance awkwardly and somewhat cool at the same time. And from here on out, we just kind of go with the back and forth of Will and Uncle Phil trying to control Ashley. And at the end of the episode, we see that Ashley just isn't really trying to be controlled. She just doesn't want to disappoint anybody, you know. And at the end of the episode, she ends up wanting to quit violin, ballet, art brushing, chores, pretty much everything that all kids don't want to do. And that's pretty much the episode, and all the little subtle nuances in between are just amazing, and I don't want to spoil it, so I'm giving you the bullet points in the cliff notes, if you will, so that way we can have some stuff to laugh about in between.
If you will.
It just happened. You couldn't just let it go, could you?
Nope, couldn't do it. They can only hear us, so we have to give them that audio bit, because I can't give you a look.
He couldn't let it go, but it's okay. It happened. I'm letting it go. The moment has passed.
So, in truth, I think you really hit the point on the head. 9-year-olds don't want to do anything, and when you're at that age, your parents are really just kind of trying to turn you into a tiny version of them, which is what Uncle Phil touches on very, very heavily in this episode. He talks about how he used to stand outside the New York Philharmonic. No 9-year-old
No, he didn't. He stood outside of his parents' room while they played James Brown records.
Exactly.
And Now he wants Ashley to be the Philharmonic genius because that's where they are right now.
I'm very curious if they picked these names intentionally because you have Phil Harmonic.
You know, I can't say that they did, but I want to think that it just happened naturally. I really do.
We're going to leave it there then.
Yeah. You know, Philharmonic and if you will. See, I let the Philharmonic go. I just let that moment pass. See, people, I'm the bigger person here. This is what I do. I become the bigger person. But that was one of my favorite parts in that episode, though, because it was really Uncle Phil trying to assert, I've come to this certain stature. We live in a certain area. And then Aunt Vivian is always, she's one of my favorite characters because even though she's a lawyer, an educator, all this and all that, she still brings Uncle Phil back down to earth. Like, you like James Brown when we met.
She's the one who's with it in this episode and really in the show more than anything else. I think she just kind of recognizes what this situation is, which is a situation that doesn't work, doesn't make sense. Will does not belong there, but he's there because she loves Vi, Will's mother, and wants to make sure that Will gets the proper experience growing up that he wouldn't have gotten in West Philadelphia.
Of course. And I mean, even in the beginning of the episode with the references of I Got the Power. Uncle Phil doesn't know who that is. Aunt Vivian is like, oh yeah, I listen to that on the radio all the time. It's a good song.
And that leads to what becomes the reoccurring theme, which is Will versus Uncle Phil fighting for the power over Ashley.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that Uncle Phil definitely had going on is that mustache. Now, in the earlier seasons, for those who don't remember, Uncle Phil did not have the beard that he was sporting in the pilot. He had this mustache, and he pulled it off well.
I call it the Mr. Potato Head, if you...
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his head is kind of round and bald.
It just works out that way.
So, hopefully, within several episodes, someone just kind of pointed out, do you ever think about growing that beard back? It might be a better look for you.
Yeah, I think he was holding on to that look. That and the Art Deco tie was his look for season 1.
And it really, like we've said before, they're still kind of figuring things out. Mm-hmm. Nobody's quite sure what their character is. And there is this affectation to their voices in this episode where they are trying to sound, I would call it upper crust. It's not quite British.
No.
But Carlton's coming in and he's like, I'm going to talk like this the entire time because it is proper.
Yeah, it reminded me a little of a Casey Kasem radio host. I felt like he just held on to that. Even in the jokes, like the jokes came out. How do I say it? Dry.
Yeah.
Like, what is dry? Like desert dry.
Carlton is basically trying to be his father in every way, shape, and form. So he's a 16-year-old that wants to be a 40-year-old man. Yeah. And it gets to a certain point with any kid. Like when you're, say, 9 or below and you make adult jokes, then it's adorable. But the minute that you're driving, it's not adorable anymore. Yeah. It's just awkward.
And I mean, even the chuckle, like, I think the chuckle was funny to laugh at because I wasn't laughing because he thought it was funny. I was laughing at the fact that somebody really laughs like that.
So this is kind of the environment that we're in, and Uncle Phil would prefer it if Will were acting more like Carlton because he sees Carlton as someone who has much more of a future than Will does at the moment. But the way Uncle Phil goes about trying to instill that into Will, it seems like it's kind of a setup to backfire. Because Ashley, she has to go to her violin class. Mm-hmm. Uncle Phil can't take her. Aunt Viv can't take her.
Hillary doesn't want to take her.
And she makes a very valiant effort to get out of it. It's a very wonderful highbrow speech about how she refuses to drive until there's some sort of carpool in order to save gas and the environment.
Even though all the cars they have require diesel fuel.
Yeah, they have a Jag, they have a Bentley.
And not the Bentley quite yet. I don't think they've ever said that they had a Bentley. I'm pretty sure they did. But
didn't they say in the episode because Will asked for the keys?
I think it was the Jag, the BMW, and he ended up getting the Volvo. But we could be wrong, so watch it and tell us if we're wrong.
Yes.
You never know. We might be. They might have had a secret Bentley.
I'm assuming they had like an entire secret Batmobile.
I want to believe he had like one of those old school long Rolls Royces with just the square front.
I want to start the fan theory that Uncle Phil secretly wanted to be Batman. It's like he couldn't do it. He didn't have the physicality, but he's
he
like,
couldn't fit in the suit.
If I ever just got myself into shape, I've got the Batcave.
He had the Batman voice because when he did bust into Ashley's room, he had the Batman voice.
He does that a pawn shop. You took my daughter to a pawn shop.
Big Sal's to be exact.
And he was a very accomplished voice actor, so he had that robust nature to him and knew how to play that very well. He was a man who played with his size very well on screen, despite the fact that it was not exactly a Batman physique.
No, he had a graceful linebacker body.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would call it.
Which is going to actually lead to something later in the episode, because, spoiler alert, this is the first time that Uncle Phil actually throws Jazz out of the house.
The most iconic thing ever.
I have a note from that moment. Do you think that the costume designer, when she saw that Jazz was going to be thrown out of the house, knew, A, that they weren't going to want to shoot it more than one time, and B, that Jazz would then have to be wearing that outfit every single time that he got thrown out of the house?
But you want to know the funniest thing about that? And this is just what goes on in my head. I could be completely crazy. You know how you have like stunt people for specific shows and stuff like that?
Yep.
I can't imagine that, they thought it would become that big of a thing where they would have to have that person or that outfit on set. So it's like, hey, we know it's season 5, but you're going to get thrown out of doors all day today. That's what you're going to do. I don't think that they thought it was going to be that big.
Well, but we know this from experience. When you're on set, even if you're having a good time, you always want to do as little as possible.
Yeah.
So if you can just shoot something once and then continually reuse it over and over again,
of course.
That way you get to go home, you get to have some food. You don't have to be on set for however many hours you have to be on set for.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to say to the customer, okay, that shirt, go get that shirt. Oh, you don't have that shirt? Okay, go to the store, buy 90 of them.
I bet there was probably 2 left. And the costume designer just pretty much was like, we have the 90. Yeah. We really don't have it. We're just going to use that stock.
Yeah. We're going to have a really heavy dry cleaning bill. That's okay.
Yeah. We're good though. We're good. We got all 90 of them.
So before Jazz gets thrown out, what leads to those series of events is Will is driving carpool, where he makes a fairly racist Miss Daisy joke, which would not have flown today. Another reason that I love the show.
Of course not.
And he ends up in the station wagon. He has all of the girls playing their violins, which was completely unsafe. How did an eye not get put out from all of those bows in the back of the station wagon?
I think the only casualty was the pink hat, which needed to die in that episode.
We could have gotten rid of the pink hat and got the bass into the trunk of the car instead.
Yeah, but I mean, personally, I think it would have been more hilarious had he had that person on the roof playing.
So just to clarify, in case you haven't seen this particular part of the episode, when Will decides to leave one of the girls behind, he leaves her behind because she has a bass instead of just a violin. The thing was bigger than the entire 9-year-old girl's body. So imagine having a 9-year-old girl on top of a car holding a bass. Now, is this more offensive than making a Miss Daisy joke? We'll leave that for you to decide.
Yeah, and I think it's offensive to have a 9-year-old outside on the curb with a bass.
Although, in fairness, remember, this is Bel Air.
This is true, but still, the bass could crush a 9-year-old body.
Yeah, I've seen that happen before. Yeah. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
So we make it to the class. When we get there, this teacher, I'm gonna say there were slight Nazi undertones to her accent and affectation. Would you
I was
agree?
just gonna go with Eastern European. Maybe she was just.
Well, she plays into that stereotype of that, ballet German Russian teacher who probably wants to hit you if you ever hit a wrong note.
Yeah.
And also has a very voracious sexual appetite in this particular case.
I thought that was hilarious. I mean, that escaped me the first time I saw it because I just heard Stravinsky. But I didn't hear all of the adult context that went along with it.
She definitely makes references to having had sex with, I think, 4 different famous composers.
Yeah. And I think she had a huge crush on Stravinsky because, there was a fire in her voice when she talked about it.
Now, I think this ultimately becomes an epidemic of lack of helicopter parenting, because do you think the parents even knew that the teacher was having these sort of conversations? And I can understand Will not paying attention to it because he was completely checked out and he wasn't paying attention to anything she was saying. But if a parent came in and heard all of that, I feel like they would walk up and say, you're a really good teacher, but could you maybe not talk about your sexual prowess? Yeah, and she would probably just yell. Like that's the other side of the coin, is that she's just the greatest teacher in all of Bel Air, and parents fight to get in. So once the kids are in the classroom, it's like, no, it's okay. Talk about sex. It's like,
I feel like that would be like a awkward dad-mom conversation. The father would be like, no, it's okay. She's enriching her life, and the mother would be like, I'm not sure she should be learning this at 9.
She's 9 years old. She doesn't understand it, Vivian. It's not important.
Not quite the Batman voice, but almost there though. Almost.
We'll get it. I mean, this is only the 3rd episode. It's like, by the end of it, we're going to have Will down, Carlton down, Hillary down, Uncle Phil, and everyone.
My goal is to get Jeffrey.
Oh, we'll get him.
Because I love, especially in this episode, how they introduce his dry comedy. Because I believe Jeffrey is like top tier comedy in this.
Which is something else. Now, obviously, Jeffrey has a constant state of annoyance, just by his nature. And I kind of saw undertones. Do you think the writers at this early stage were trying to set up Jeffrey and Will as foils for each other? Because before Will showed up, Jeffrey was the cheeky one.
Yeah.
He was the one who would make commentary, and then Will shows up, and now he's just causing problems everywhere, and he's taken over the role as the cheeky one, and meaning that Jeffrey has less carte blanche to say whatever he wants, because Uncle Phil's already annoyed.
But I still kind of feel like Jeffrey feels that he's still the funny one because, he has Uncle Phil's ear. Uncle Phil will actually listen to his joke. He might not laugh. I take it back. He probably will. He will not laugh, but he'll let you tell the joke.
To a point. I mean, we see in this episode, Jeffrey was trying to amuse himself at Uncle Phil's expense, and Uncle Phil comes in, Jeffrey, what is the point of all of this? But it took him a good 5 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey clearly is the alpha in this situation, mostly because he knows his place. Will has no idea what his place is.
I feel like Jeffrey is the accomplished, seasoned comedian, and Will is just that funny kid.
So when Uncle Phil comes in, he's not going to complain to Will. He's going to come in and complain to Jeffrey. And the big complaint of the episode, the B story, is that Uncle Phil is stressed because there's construction going on at his office. And Uncle Phil's complaining that there's hammering and drilling and jackhammering. And it really plays well to his character because what he's complaining about is the biggest set of first world problems ever going on. I work in a nice office. I have a great job. I make lots of money.
All these problems.
But I have a headache.
All these problems. I jumped out of my BMW and my $5,000 suit to go into an office to be annoyed after having a headache. I shouldn't have these problems.
And then he comes home, and what does he hear?
Drums.
He hears the new drum set. Now, mind you, this is before Jazz even arrives. We haven't even seen Jazz yet. So right now, Ashley is just kind of hitting things willy-nilly, And Jeffrey, Uncle Phil says, "What was that?" And Jeffrey's, "I believe it was a rim shot."
And to me, that was the funniest joke of the whole show.
Jeffrey gets those. Jeffrey is the comic relief and the baseline.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely the king of the one-liners. He's the one who steps in at the perfect moment and says the right thing and just, I'm going to leave now.
I feel Jeffrey's the savior of the show. I'm just going to put that out there. Just saying it straightforward, Jeffrey is going to save this show for the entire season. We would not have gotten 6 seasons of this show without Jeffrey.
Of course. Because, I mean, Jeffrey has the butler job. He takes care of all of them. Like, go get me some water. You're standing in the kitchen. I think, like, people at home are like, Jeff, there's been plenty of times where I said, Jeffrey, don't do it. I just want to see what happens if you don't do it, Jeffrey. They're in the kitchen.
We're going to get that in later seasons. They ultimately do end up going there. Jeffrey can be pushed past his breaking point, but not now. Not at the second episode.
Not now. We're still finding the funny butler.
Exactly. So we get the drums, we get the funny butler, and then we have the arrival of DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Of course.
Who starts off, I did not remember this, he entered the show as Ashley's drum teacher.
Yeah.
He didn't know Will beforehand. They weren't friends from Philadelphia.
No.
Will just kind of found him and said, I think that she's going to be a great teacher for Ashley. Let's make that happen.
Yeah.
And then he arrives, and he is Jazz.
Yeah.
That's the only way to describe it. It's like everything that Jazz was and is and will be was set in the first episode. There was no difference between beginning Jazz and later Jazz. Yeah. This was just Jazz.
I mean, I felt like he didn't need character development. He just walked in, and he said probably a total of 20 or 30 words the whole episode. But that's all you needed from him.
Like, when you walk in and the first thing you say is, "Man, y'all are rich," it's like you either think he's hood, he's going to steal everything, or he's just the greatest person on the planet.
Well, we get that, especially when we have the family scene that Jazz is introduced to. And I love it because it's such a dichotomy. It's this random guy who Will does not know in depth. He just knows he's a DJ. He just knows he's a good drum teacher. And then he has him introduced to the family while they're listening to classical music.
And this comes right after Jazz had just been upstairs, and he decides to sit down and he's going to play the drums so that Will can do some dance moves.
Yeah.
And this goes back to another reoccurring theme. Will tries very hard to dance. He cannot dance. He definitely has some flexibility. He has a swagger, but his moves are just everywhere. It's like if you shook the camera, it would look like he was in the middle of an earthquake.
Yeah, I could see that. I believe he has a few good dance moves in this body of his, in this mind of his. He just doesn't know how to put them together in a good way that they make sense.
Yeah, I mean, because he dropped down, he got the jump splits, but everything else was like a shoulder jerk. It's a more athletic version of the little kicks from Seinfeld.
Yeah, he just had a longer body. That's all it was.
He really did. And that's the reason why when we have that, we hear that drumming, we hear that dancing. When we get Jazz into the family room and we have this afternoon tea scenario going on, which is highlighted again by Carlton's incredible affectation, complaining about the fact that the drumming is ruining afternoon tea. Again, huge first world problem.
You know, once again, I live in a mansion. Why do I need this disrupting sound in my life?
Also, they're putting Carlton in very white clothing. And I don't mean Caucasian clothing. I mean, it's a lot of khaki, a lot of white button-downs. He was in a gray blazer at this point. Like, they're not even trying to mince words here. They're trying to look at him as why don't you say what it is?
I say as young Republican as possible. I'm sorry, young Republican as possible. I can't even get the words out without tripping over them. And the sad thing is there's no wrinkles in it, so it's just crease free. It should just come out young Republican. I just don't have the tone to say it.
Well, he was trying too hard to have the tone to say it.
Yeah.
It's like, Dad, I don't know what we can do about this. I think that this is one of the worst things to ever happen.
Yeah, not World War II.
No.
No, not the stock market crashing. Drumming in my house that is not too far from the Reagans.
It's too bad we never did get to see the Reagans.
Well, I don't think they could have afforded that, especially not quite yet. And I don't know if the Reagans wanted to be a part of it quite yet. I think they wanted to see where it was going, to see if it would help their political plight.
Well, I mean, he was an actor, but it wasn't like they were offering Terminator money like they did to Arnold.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But also one of my favorite things, besides the fact that Jazz meets Hillary and is completely enamored with her, that there's still this culture clash where they're sitting in the family room and it's all going well. Everybody's a little on edge because Jazz, this person that they don't know is there, almost casing the joint. You know, this feels like it's sterling. Yeah, it's got that weight to it. But then he goes at the perfect moment, and I call it the DJ Clue disease. You know, you get to Uncle Phil's favorite part in the song, and he just begins to scratch.
Now, just to clarify a little bit, because they're rich, they have a record player.
And
everything is being played on vinyl right now.
Yeah.
And Jazz, he is volunteered by Will to turn up the radio in the middle of a Stravinsky piece, and Jazz sees that vinyl, and what does he have to do?
He's got to scratch.
He's got to scratch.
He's a DJ.
And that's the first time, not the last time, but the first time we actually see Uncle Phil crack. Because we get Jazz thrown out of the house for the first time, and then we cut to this scene where Uncle Phil is maniacal.
Yeah.
And he has cracked, and he is broken, and he is happy with what he just did.
Yeah.
And Aunt Vivian says to him, "You just threw a man out of our house onto the lawn."
Specifically drop kicked.
Yes.
Now that would have been amazing. Though we've never seen him throw Uncle Phil throw Jazz out, I think if we could know that he got drop kicked and that's how he got out, it would make it that much more amazing.
If you look at the trajectory of Jazz being thrown out, and then you imagine that it was a drop kick, it completely changes the velocity of everything. Because it makes Uncle Phil a lot scarier. Because that wasn't a pick up and throw. That was a throw up in the air and have to kick the bottom of Jazz's foot to get that trajectory that he had going.
Once again, graceful linebacker. He's got the power to do it.
And it's scary and awesome.
Yeah, and the joy, I say the piece of it that Uncle Phil felt after he did that was almost taking Uncle Phil out of character for a second, and then he just comes right back to being Dad.
You see, I would actually argue something to the contrary. I think that's much more where they found Uncle Phil's character, because they're still throwing that spaghetti against the wall. They're still trying to figure out who everyone is in this crazy fruit bowl that is the Banks family, and he is this man who is very well kept, who has worked very hard, but still has that little bit of hood in him.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, and I think it's like we said earlier. You know, when he was trying to play, "Oh, I used to sit outside of the Philharmonic." No, you didn't sit outside the Philharmonic. You wanted to, but really, you were at this concert.
That's the point, though, where Uncle Phil does have to bring it back. He brings it down. He realizes he has to be a father, and has that heart-to-heart moment with Ashley. We get a great moment where Will is trying to be the father figure in that moment, saying, "You have to work with me here. I believe this girl has the talent, but she's not going to be on Yo MTV Raps if she does not practice."
Yeah, I think that's just Will catching the little bit of LA that he's been there. You know, he's automatically become a manager and an agent, and he's only been in Bel Air for less than a month?
And this was really interesting because not only does Will pull this off very nicely, but one of the things that he complained about quite a bit about these early seasons was that he was very much still learning how to act. And if you watch this sequence, you can actually see him mouthing Uncle Phil's lines while Uncle Phil is saying them.
Yeah.
Because he memorized the entire script, and he had to mouth the lines so that he would know what came next.
And you pointed that out to me. I've heard it before, but I've never actually sat down and tried to see it. And I saw it, and I was like, wow. Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And it was on camera. If he wasn't on camera, it'd be a completely different thing. But it's like, while the camera is on him.
And that's what happens sometimes in a sitcom where it's like, this is the only usable shot.
Yep.
We don't have a choice. And this was before you could go in and use Adobe to make it so that his mouth didn't move. You couldn't Photoshop it.
Nope.
You couldn't make anything happen. It's like, all right, this just has to go to air. And that was when everything was still in standard definition. So they just said, nobody's going to look at this.
It's what some actors call real acting.
Exactly. You can't rely on computers.
No.
You couldn't auto-tune it.
Yeah, I would love to see an auto-tuned sitcom. I think that would be awesome.
There's actually a great, and we'll put it up on our Twitter page. Someone went in and auto-tuned lines from this show and had the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song playing underneath of it. It's
ingenuity. I like it.
I call it Arnold Schwarzenegger because
why?
Because there's this line, Jeffrey, he says Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they auto-tune him saying it, so it just went, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, and that was when Arnold was a big deal. So, I'm gonna have to visit that one. I'll probably spend about an hour on that laughing.
Okay. Like I said, and you can join us. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. You can email us at sofreshsoprince@gmail.com if we get anything wrong and you want to yell at us. We appreciate being yelled at.
If I'm wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong. Just don't yell too many times. Don't be me. Don't be me.
Yeah, I mean, you can put it in all caps. That's okay.
It's okay. One comment. When you get to 5, then that's just stalker.
But you know what? Please, stalk us. It's okay. It's like, just do it from where you are.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, listen
I can live
to
with that.
every episode. You can stalk us online. In fact, we appreciate being Facebook stalked. But, just don't show up at our houses. Wait till the live show.
Yeah. I like to feel safe, close to home. If I'm far from home, I automatically don't feel safe. So, it's okay.
Now, speaking of feeling safe, when Uncle Phil decides to try and bring everything to a head and bring everything together and make everything all happy, family, everything is okay, Will refers to this as a Theo moment.
Yeah.
Now, can you explain to our listeners who might not be aware of The Cosby Show what a Theo moment is?
Now, if you have been living under a rock for the past 100 years, you don't know who Bill Cosby is. And Bill Cosby had a little show called The Cosby Show. And a few notable actors that you might see on TV or have seen on TV have been on there. But at the end or the middle of every show, kind of towards the end, Bill Cosby would always try and instill, some fatherly man wisdom into Theo, his son. And it was always just the moment. It was never like they transitioned into it. It was like, this happened, and now we're going to go to the lecture. And in true Bill Cosby fashion, he would sit his son down and break the comedy and be serious for, I'd say, about 2-3 minutes of the episode. And it just became the Theo moment. We laugh about it. We all got a little something out of it. But it was just to kind of normally break up the monotony of all of the jokes and the Cosbyisms that were there.
I can see that. And obviously at this time, The Cosby Show was the seminal African-American sitcom. It was the number one show, but it was the first time that people sort of had a view into African-American life. So there were obviously going to be comparisons between The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and The Cosby Show. So they just put that reference in there head on.
Especially the fact that they both were well off or at least, financially stable. That it was a break from the Jeffersons and all the other things that TV had been that surrounded black casts, all black casts. You either had the trying to make it, or the we're living in the projects, or we're doing this. These people had clearly made it, and I think that was a way of writing it where they were definitely, I'd say, very deliberate about it. You know, they weren't trying to dance around the moment. It was like, okay, we made it, so we're gonna have a Theo moment, just like the Cosbys.
Do we have to touch on the fact that Bill Cosby had a few issues later in life that
I think we're still in the good part of Bill Cosby's career.
Good. We're going to stay there.
Still there.
Okay. So when we have this Theo moment, Uncle Phil sits Ashley down and again explains to her in the nicest way possible that you are 9 years old.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you actually want or need to be a successful adult.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give you skills that are going to make it so that when you realize that you have to pay your own rent, you have means to do it.
Of course. And I think, like, especially in the Fresh Prince, this is a definitely reoccurring theme, because you'll see in later seasons when other kids come on, you know, Uncle Phil still tries to do that, or Will try and do that. And, you know, I think it's a picture that they're definitely trying to paint, because even while this is going on, it's a back and forth between Uncle Phil and Will trying to play the father figure. And at the end of the episode, we learn that Ashley's 9. She's not thinking about an adult life. She's not thinking about rent. She just wants to have fun. Where are my cartoons and my cereal? That's it.
And that means she doesn't want to play the violin.
No ballet.
And she doesn't want to play the drums.
Yeah.
And we have a very sitcom-y moment where Aunt Vivian says, all right, you don't want to play the drums, you don't have to play the drums. You don't want to play the violin, you don't have to play the violin. Is there anything else you want to stop? Yeah. And Ashley says, yes, I'm going to stop ballet. But all of a sudden, Mom wants to see her daughter dance.
Yeah.
As we learn later, Vivian herself is a dancer, and she wants to impart that with her daughter. And that's the one thing. It's like, oh my gosh, my daughter doesn't want to dance. I'm a failure as a mother. I need to try and fight this. It's a very sitcom moment.
Oh, yeah. And I even think it's a more sitcom moment when Ashley and Aunt Vivian leave, and you have Uncle Phil and Will once again agreeing on a moment at the end of the show, and that's all they're going to give you.
In a weird way, they're kind of trying to slam it down our throats that Will and Phil aren't really as different as we made them out to be in the last episode, and we're going to keep investigating that with all sorts of wacky scenarios.
Yeah, it just, if you weren't a fan, it was uncomfortable, but you can take it if you're a fan of the show.
But at its best, what it's doing is they're bringing in this outside party into the very symbiotic cell that is the banks.
Yeah.
And what it's doing is making some people uncomfortable, but also making it so that it's bringing out the best in people, because Ashley, she might have gone crazy. Like, she might have gone all Carrie if not for the fact that Will had shown up.
Yeah.
And sort of taught her, it's like, if you don't like something, it's okay to say it.
Yeah.
Because Uncle Phil, try as he might be a little bit oppressive.
Well, a little bit oppressive. I mean, he's a giant man in stature to regular people. So to a 9-year-old, he's Goliath. You know, you don't want to disappoint Goliath.
He's Shredder.
Oh, okay. Oroku Saki. You know what I mean? Hey, I was just going to go with Goliath just because of the size. But, you know, yeah, he can be Master Shredder.
He's a fine Master Shredder.
Yes, he's a refined gentleman who can do some major damage to your body and your spirit all at the same time.
And we saw that in spades in this episode.
Yeah.
And were it not for Will's unrelenting self-confidence, Uncle Phil would have broken him a lot more quickly.
Yeah, but then the show wouldn't have worked.
That's very true.
I think it's that's why I say Goliath, because it's like a David and Goliath moment. Like, Will is trying to get there, and he thinks he has the plan. I got it. I got the wit. I got the looks. I got the charm. I'm out in Bel Air now. But Uncle Phil has it. and Uncle Phil can just step on him in his mind. But Will is like that bug that's under your shoe that just won't go away.
He's going to keep asking for the Benz. He's going to keep asking for the Jag.
And he's going to keep getting the Volvo.
Until he doesn't.
Yeah.
Until the day comes where Uncle Phil gets a little more like Will and Will gets a little bit more like Uncle Phil.
These are all scary thoughts right now.
And yet it's exactly what happens in the show.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I mean, you guys already know. It's just, we're just explaining how it happens, you know.
And in a real way, letting us go in and look at these moments a little bit deeper, with a little bit more clarity in hindsight, and allowing the adult version of ourselves to reapproach it with the hindsight that was the childlike wonder, and also recognize that there were some jokes that definitely went over our head in the original process.
And I would even go as far to say the Will Smith we see now, just as a regular person, has a lot of Uncle Phil in him. You know, even outside of what we see as Will Smith, the actor, even outside what we see as the cast, you know, I think it definitely did play a part, because there's some Uncle Phil things that he says in real life now.
One of the things that I'm actually very grateful for in this show is that what a lot of sitcoms will try to do is like mug to the audience a little bit.
Yeah.
And there were so many points in this episode and in the show in general where Will just could have turned to the camera and said, "Man, parents just don't understand."
If that would have happened, I think I would have turned off the TV.
I think everyone would have turned off the TV, but that's what the impulse is when you have a room of 35-year-old male writers trying to write for a 17-year-old black character. It's like, he's going to say this, and it's going to be hilarious, and everyone's going to love it.
Not quite.
Not at all.
Almost. Yeah. But I mean, you know, I think they did a really good job in the first few episodes, and it's like you said earlier, there's sometimes Will just went off, and you're just going to have to adjust. And I think they did a good job of bouncing back, and I think it gave them a lot of ammo. I mean, even in the second episode, just introducing Jazz, I honestly don't believe Jazz had a script. I feel like he just walked in and just did what he normally did. And they just had to adjust, and they kept writing and building on that.
All part of their plan.
Yeah.
So, to recap, anything else that you think we should have touched on?
You know, I don't think so. I think we covered it all. I think there's nothing else left to say just about this episode. You know, it's because I don't want to be a spoiler. You know, we all know what's going to happen, but we haven't really taken an in-depth look at it until now.
Well, I think we can agree that this episode is much better than the pilot was.
Yeah, it's miles away from the pilot.
Much more entertaining. People seem to have a better sense of what was going on. And just funnier.
Yeah, it was a lot slower. The pilot was just one-liners everywhere. I think they had a formula for this one, you know, and characters, actually.
And there was much more mustache in this episode.
Yeah, my favorite was the freeze frame shot of Uncle Phil busting in Ashley's room, because I feel like that's just going to be Uncle Phil's role for a good couple of seasons, just trying to stop Will with that angry face and that gray suit and Art Deco tie.
That damn Art Deco tie.
Yeah, it was the era for that, so, you know, I can't be mad at it.
We're going to get so much Art Deco in this show.
Just swirls and peaches and pinks and faded colors.
So that covers the episode right now. Thank you guys. Be sure to like us. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr. We're on all of it. Let us know what you liked. Let us know if we missed anything. You can always email us at sofreshsoprince@gmail.com if it's something that you can't fit into a tweet or a Facebook message. But thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah.
Lorenzo, any last thoughts?
My last thought is, you know what? I would love to see somebody find the shirt, the Jazz shirt, and that pink Lakers hat, and just put it together. Send us pictures of your favorite Fresh Prince outfits.
Tag yourself on Instagram using the hashtag SoFreshSoPrince and tag us in it at SoFreshSoPrince with that shirt or a similar shirt or a similar hat or a completely different hat and just a selfie of you with the hashtag SoFreshSoPrince.
Yeah, you're only going to get so much out of this of what you put into it. So, I feel like if you fully commit to the costume design is the best way I can say it, it'll hit home a little bit more, on top of the fact that everything is funny. We love having you guys listen to us and just respond to us and always, have as much fun with us as possible. So, let's bring back the biker hats and the print button-ups and all the Technicolor that we can until next time you hear us.
And on that note, until next time, I have been Andrew Apple.
And I have been Lorenzo Gord.
Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to stay so fresh.
So print.
Peace.
Goodbye.
So Fresh, So Prince is a Bitten from the Apple production, produced by Andrew Apple and Lorenzo Gordon. Music by Griffey Majors.